Welcome to episode number 6 of the Finance Mate podcast. It's Finance Mate. And today's topic is going to be super interesting, everyone. We're going to speak about retirement and kaffee, kuchen, and cash flow. So we basically speak about the different mindsets around retirement, what it actually is, because it can mean very different things for a lot of people. And then later on, we're going to speak about how financial planning comes into that and like what you need to consider when you think about the concept of retirement and how we can help. And I just want to get into it immediately because I think it's going to be super interesting, the different mindsets that we also have here on the pod and that we've experienced living in different cultures or growing up in different cultures. So yeah, what's retirement for you guys? Kareem, if you wanna kick it off.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, as you said, very different in different cultures. I mean, my dad is 75 and my mom's aunt is like 82 and they're both still full-time working in Egypt. So I don't have like a concept of retirement in my family, I guess. Um, I don't know. I think the way I perceive retirement, it is quite a like Western creation from coming from maybe this like nine to fives or even from government jobs, right? Like where you work a set number of years and then after this set number of years you get to stop working and then you can go and enjoy your life. I guess that's sort of the image that was created for me. But I don't know, like maybe for you guys like growing up in Germany, is that sort of how it was communicated or
Yeah,
Definitely.
and
Alex, you can go first if you want.
yeah, good. I think the expectation that you have is that you work, and at some point you are getting a passive income. There's some insurance money you paid into it, and then you'll get money out of it. So I think that's the expectation. I don't even necessarily think that's what I would want to go for. But on one side, it gives you some security, like if you really don't like your job anymore, because you've just hassling through till retirement because you felt like you have to just provide and that's the work you do and it's been really intense, and then there's an end to it, right? And I think that's it for a lot of people. And the other part, of course, is the safety net if you get old, that there's some point where you can stop working. And from experience from my parents, for example, I know that for my mom, who worked in a government job, like retirement was it. She was really trying to get there really, really hard, and pushing through and just, keep at it. Like she even lowered her retirement age by 5 years, but she was really working towards it because she wasn't super happy in her role. For my dad, completely different. He started to get insurance money for when he was like mid 50s, and then he started working again when he reached retirement age. Like once he didn't get any insurance money anymore because he liked his job. He's a veterinarian and he's mid 70s now. And he still goes to patients. He even works for free. Like he goes to Morocco, helps in shelters and so on. So like I think in reality, it looks different than what people perceive or what they plan for. A lot of
yeah.
people, I think, still work, do something, but the idea really is that at some point you can stop working and enjoy your life.
Yeah, I think for me, growing up in South Germany, close to the Swiss border or next to the Swiss border, was very similar. Everyone had like jobs, and then there's a retirement age. If you worked in Switzerland, living in Germany, your retirement age might be better because you have like Swiss pension, not German pension. And there's a few, I mean, it's a better pension, not to get into it that much, but definitely a better system. I also had grandparents who retired earlier because they had some real estate. But yeah, they had the real estate and they were managing it until they were like almost towards the end, basically. So is that retirement, right? Are you retired if you have real estate and you're like managing it and you're trying to get, quote unquote customers or renters, like they operated like Ferienwohnungen, which is like the predecessor of Airbnbs, I would say. Yeah, so it's really, and I agree there with you, Kareem. It's this Western concept of okay, you do something that you probably not like so much for a certain period of time, and then you like have your reward at the end, which is a cash flow. And because especially in Germany, nobody teaches money, no school, no, you don't really get it from your parents either, unless they're maybe in finance. Then the government took over the role of planning your future cash flow, right? That's really
Exactly.
that's really what they did. Is like they're trying to make sure that you have a future cash flow so that you're sorted, and
Yeah.
that's kind
But
of what they're trying to build.
I think there's like big prerequisites with that, and I think that's also why, like maybe in certain other cultures or Middle East, which I know a bit more, it's not really the case, right? Like the prerequisite there is firstly you trust that the government is going to like be there long term, firstly, right? Like that
Yeah.
it's going to be like there and stable and established. Because yeah, if you're like 30 and like you're paying into like a system that you're gonna get paid out in 35 years, I need to trust then that like this is actually gonna be there, right? Otherwise, what is it? And then the second thing is not just trust that they're gonna be there, but trust that they will actually like pay out and like take care of you and that they're like thinking of you. Um, I mean, in Egypt, everyone like takes like things into their own hands because they're like, I don't trust any of you guys. Like, I'm not paying you any money. I need to take care of myself, and yeah, that's sort of, I guess, like people retire, like the people that I know that say openly, like older in age, that they retire is sort of more, yeah, maybe they step out of day to day going into a job and usually then have some alternate thing where they want to spend their time. Usually it's maybe family oriented, taking care of grandchildren, traveling a bit more, even helping out like in the community, like Alex, you said, maybe religiously or like charities or things like that, and want to spend their time more like that. But there's no like real official age. It's sort of really by choice. It's like, okay, now I feel I'm in a place where I can do that, and usually it's also a bit like a switch in knowing that maybe your children are financially independent enough to also take care of you if you get stuck, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the role I guess the government plays here, or the pension system.
That's the whole cash flow design thing, right? The cash flow can come from anywhere. In Germany, if you have, or in other countries where you have this pension system, then it can or ideally will come from the government for most people. If that's enough or not, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But yeah, I spent time in Asia. I lived in China, and there it's similar to Egypt in the sense where um, there were just not like these systems that you have in the West. So older people rely on their children to like take care of them. And then that also, I mean, that creates pressure, right? Because then they want to have children and they need to take care of like their parents and their children and themselves. While here more in Western cultures is like it's more trickle down, like the older generations take care of the younger generations until they're like independent and then they go and do their own stuff and like sort of replicate it, right?
Yeah, but even in Western cultures, I feel like there are big differences. Like depending how integrated the families still are. Like Spain, Italy, so I think is different than Germany, different than the Nordics,
Different than the US.
Yeah.
different than the US in terms of like families, multi-generational homes taking care of each other. I feel like in Germany the expectation is really you take care of yourself in a way. And then people even forget oftentimes that, for example, if your parents didn't have enough money, you might actually end up paying, like the state is gonna, provide the minimum amount of care, but then you still have to pay the state back eventually, which like a lot of people don't necessarily even know about or calculate with. But yes, the state takes care to some degree in Germany, but then they still try to make the family then pay. So it's not completely state reliant, but I think in people's mindsets in Germany, it's very individual, where you get your money from as a retired person. And I don't think most people, or I haven't heard anybody saying that they're relying on their children during retirement. I
Yeah.
think that is in
So
Germany.
Alex, what is retirement for you then?
What for me personally?
Yes, for you personally. What's retirement for you personally?
For me personally, I mean, I know what I tell my clients. So it's just actually slightly different than what I have in mind for myself, because what I have in mind for myself, and maybe that's also our generation, is doing something that I love doing. I don't feel the need to have an age where like, yeah, I'm done here. I will drop the ball and that's it. So I think retirement for me is more, building wealth overall, not necessarily for a specific age. Of course, goals should be tangible, but for me, it's more, for example, building a passive income over time, that I feel like, okay, at 50, I can be, for example, part-time work optional, and maybe at 60, I can be, if I want to be work optional and do something else and not rely on my income. So it's not necessarily stop working. It's more just, reducing the reliance on my income through work. So if I wanted to, I can reduce it. I can, do something else personally, but I'm not planning on it, right? I'm rather focusing on finding something that I really like doing now, and having my own business, not working with you guys, not having like a boss or a business that can change. You can lose your job, whatever. So I'm really rather trying to optimize now.
What about you, Kareem?
It's an interesting question because I think like Alex said, I want to live the way that I want to live. And for me it's a little bit different. I think also for our generation, I think we try to live like this idea of I'm gonna buckle down and work for a bunch of years and only then I'm gonna live the way I want to live, is a quite an outdated sort of way of thinking. At least I feel that. I think a lot of me and a lot of the people that I know have much more experiences much earlier in their life, like travel, doing also community-based stuff. So typical things that maybe people before would only do when they retire. Like I remember in the last company me and Daniel worked on together, one of the founders told the story when she was getting her sailing license that she met a lot of people who just retired and was like, oh, I've been waiting until I
Yeah.
retire so that I have the time to do my sailing license. And she found that really sad, as in okay, sure, you had to wait your whole life just to have the time and the money to do this. But you're 67 years old, probably not in the best physical shape you've ever been. And it's a bit more challenging. So why didn't you maybe try to balance your life a bit more earlier and try to have those experiences maybe when you're actually more fit and more able to enjoy them?
Boomer
Um,
mentality.
sorry?
That's the boomer mentality.
Yeah,
You
that's the
have
boomer
to just
mentality.
grind, make some money, and then eventually
Yeah.
you have enough money to get what you want and chill,
Yeah.
right? And have
But
some money.
Exactly.
I think there's actually a valid point because it sort of worked also. Like it did work,
Yeah,
right?
work.
For
Yeah.
For that
that
generation.
for that
Yeah.
generation, it really worked.
Yeah.
Like if you
Uh-huh.
look at the people who had like good jobs, the
Work
cost
40
for
years, retire 20 years. That worked,
yeah,
right? Like the
it
40
really
years paid
worked.
for
Yeah.
the 20 years.
Yeah.
And I paid in the system, company pension, whatever, and that worked. Now not necessarily, you can work 40 years and still not being able to chill during retirement. So might as well enjoy life now to the extent that you can. So
100%.
for
So
me,
for
I
me,
was
it's
yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
so just to continue the point about the retirement. So for me, it's really more I guess it's more the American mindset of financial independence in a way. Okay, I want to make sure that however long I live, I have enough money to live the life that I want to live. I don't think I have such extravagant lifestyle needs, so I'm fine. But just yeah, having enough to live how I want to live forever. I don't mind working. I don't really think of, oh, one day I really want to stop working, because I just try to make my job something I actually want to do. So yeah, I guess that's sort
Do you
of how
see
I think
yourself?
about it.
Do you see yourself being in Germany? When
It's impossible to answer that question, I would say, for me as an international person. And I know that if that becomes problematic, right? Yeah, from a financial planning perspective, it's
you,
problematic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also being an managing director of a company. Good luck leaving Germany, Kareem.
Yeah.
The state is gonna, make your life a living hell from a tax perspective.
No,
Yeah.
there's ways. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
I've
no,
also you want to finish your point, Kareem? Go on.
yeah, just back to retirement. I mean, just the idea that okay, as someone with quite an international background, not knowing if by the time I'm 67 and however many years, if I'm still going to be in this country or not,
Yeah.
like really changes how I should be thinking about financial planning. Just because, like, I think we mentioned it a couple of episodes ago, like the entire system is still designed for that boomer lifestyle where you work in a company for 30 years, you get paid, like a consistent salary, and then at like 65 or 67, you sort of get your package and you leave, and then you go and enjoy your life. Like the whole system is still designed for that. And most people in my generation like don't live like that at all.
I've also thought about it a lot, and I mean, I guess yeah, big part of it is the generational thing, right? But yeah, it's basically a cash flow state that you will have that you can build either passively, like more or less passively with, paying into systems like a pension system, or that you can build more actively and manage actively like throughout your whole life, right? And that cash flow state is retirement. So for me, I don't see it as like a point in time at all. For me, it's more like a state. And similar to you, Alex, I also think like, okay, I'm trying to build wealth, and then it in the end, like that wealth should like support my sort of lifestyle, right? And yeah, what age that is highly unpredictable also. I mean,
Exactly.
especially if you're like a founder or freelancer, or yeah, a person that has like very fluctuating income and investments, right? They can also fluctuate a lot. So it's a constantly changing state actually that yeah, you should like
So
be
the
planning and have in mind.
so what I tell our clients, right, to how I would think about it from a planning perspective. So it's tangible, and you can actually, have some numbers and work with that and see if that makes sense. And because the way what we just described is a bit hard to work with those numbers, right? So what we're talking about is then having like retirement. The concept of retirement is then gonna be that you don't have to work anymore, right? That you have a passive income, that money's coming in, ideally for the rest of your life, indefinitely as an annuity, for example, or rent, whatever. So money that comes continuously, and that you don't have to work anymore. At that point in time, you can be off if you want to, and you have to define an amount and an age. And that is very difficult for a lot of people. How I see it is, or how we do it is use your current expenses, like calculate what the future value of that is going to be, and then define an age where you really say, okay, I would like to really stop working at that point in time, or be able to stop working. Doesn't mean you have to. And so that can be a bit later, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to work with 60 anymore, or not as much, or not be reliant on my job, maybe change jobs. But define a point in time where you don't have to work anymore. And then you drop, then you use the expenses, for example, as a baseline, extrapolate them, and then you say, right now I don't know, spending 2,500 euros per month. So use that, calculate the number for the future value, and then at 60, figure out how much that is, for example, at 67. And then you figure out, how much of the current things that you already pay into, like state pension, company pension, I don't know, having a house, having a foreign pension, how far that is going to get you, right? Is that going to get you over the line? You already have enough money to at least pay your expenses, right? It doesn't need to be an extravagant like spending that you plan for, but at least have enough money to survive, right? Pay your expenses, and that's it.
And just to clarify, like future value, like just means like, okay, if you look at your expenses on average per month today, like let's say it's 3,000 euros, whatever. In 30 years, like your 3,000 euros is not going to buy you the same things that it can buy you today. So future value is adjusted for inflation pretty much because life gets more expensive, right? So like also when you think of retirement and you think of things that are so far in the future, inflation plays a big part. So if you live in, and I think that actually contributes to the cultural sort of like inability to plan for retirement. Like, I mean, the last 5, 10 years, like in Egypt, inflation was like near 15% or something. Like, how do you plan? How do you plan like
Yeah,
30-year inflation at 15%? I mean,
yeah.
like it's ridiculous, right?
I also want to like so the concept of okay, there's like oh so how we do with the clients like there's a point of where we stop working, and I think that's just like in how I understand the retirement and like the cash flow design, that's the point where most people's main source of income will stop, right? So if you model all your income sources and then you say, okay, when's actually your main income source gonna stop? That's
Yeah.
65, 63, German government talking about 67, 70, whatever, right? Um, also a different topic, but that's actually sort of like what causes that point of time thinking. It's like, okay, and a lot of people don't have other income sources necessarily. They have maybe like a portfolio somewhere, or like some, I don't know, life insurance or other insurance, pension insurance, ETF portfolio, yeah, all of this stuff. But have no clue like how to actually also like in a smart way, like get that money out so that you can live of it like for a long period of time. And that's why that like whole like point in time view comes together. It's like, okay, there's like your main income source is going away. It's going to be replaced by what? It's going to be replaced by like assets that you own, or it's going to be replaced by the government giving you money, or a combination. And yeah, like sort of that's what you actually need to look at, right?
Yeah, I quite like that definition actually. Like, retirement is when your main income source basically disappears or changes. And I think that's, yeah, it's interesting, like, way to look at it, because I think, yeah, boomer generation, if you work 30 years in one company, like, it's very clear cut, like, when that happens. And it's the transition then from that sort of stable monthly income salary into other cash flow sources, right?
Yeah.
Like public pension, company pension, whatever it may be. But yeah, like, I mean, you can do that early in life, right? Like, especially if you're not like in that sort of salary like world. I mean, that's at least what I'm personally like trying to do now, is like build up these sort of passive income streams in some way, like through building different things, investing in different things. And then hopefully one day those things will be enough to cover my expenses. And if I reach that point, in theory, I can retire. I mean, I don't think I'll stop working. Like, I'll still be doing stuff, but like hopefully that if that can cover my expenses, then I feel financially free. And that's like this FIRE movement, right, in the US, like, which is really based on this idea too.
Yeah.
I mean, from our clients, I think the majority wants to retire at 60 latest, at least in their mind, what they're planning for, right? Some even earlier. And then we're doing a check, what's feasible, like how much money do you actually need? Where's the money from your pension gonna come from? And usually at that point, right, we would have to split it also, because all the pension products that people come with, right, like company pension, state pension, but also the pension products, for example, from the US, they are meant to only be used in your 60s. And that's when you can only calculate with them, right? So usually you have to then at that point split your goals and be like, okay, I start my retirement, for example, with 65. I cash at that point in my company pension and my government pension and maybe my pensions in the US, and figure out, like, get a pension for the rest of my life and use my insurance products. And then set another goal of like, okay, instead of having more money at that point, maybe having enough money to, I don't know, be part-time work optional in mid-50s, for example. That of course you can keep working, right? But the idea, what you plan for, is then at least, if you want to, you can in the mid-50s till like 65, for example, just be part-time, spend time with your children, do the things you already love, and just get a part-time, get a half your income from passive investments.
I think that's actually like, yeah, maybe a mindset change for people that's like not thinking in terms of work, but thinking in terms of income sources or pension sources or whatever you want to
Yep.
call it in the end of the day, right? And you just mentioned FIRE, the FIRE movement, financial independence, so retire early.
Retire early.
And the other day when I was doing some more research on retirement stuff, I found that there's actually more subcategories now of the FIRE movement. Have you heard of that? Otherwise, I'll tell you guys.
Yeah,
No.
tell me.
So there's apparently, according to some subreddits, there's fat FIRE, which basically is all about retiring with a fat stash. So like finding a way to enjoy early retirement to the fullest without sacrificing any spending. Then then there's Coast Fire. Coast Fire is when you have enough saved or invested that like there's no additional contributions, and
Yeah.
compounding growth over the years will support your traditional retirement.
Yeah, we have a calculator that calculates that the
Yeah,
indefinite
yeah.
withdrawal. Yeah.
And then there's lean fire, which basically is the method that like you use like frugality and minimalism to try to like achieve financial independence as fast as possible, which often includes, all this like very detailed budgeting and like cut your expenses to a minimum, sell all your cutlery, only one spoon, one fork, one knife,
Yeah.
or just get a Göffel, how we
Eat,
say in Germany. It's like a fork and a
yeah.
and a spoon in one,
Eat ramen noodles every day for 6 years straight.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's more fire movements, which also just means that people more and more think about different ways of what that concept actually means to them, and like different ways to achieve it. And yeah, I thought that was funny. I wanted to share it.
I do
Yeah.
think it's quite
Oh,
interesting, especially because like it does come like out of the US, like mainly, right? And I think
yeah.
in the US again, it's more this like mentality of like financial independence because
Mm,
I think in a weird way, like the US is actually more similar to like developing countries in that sense. It's you're on your own. You fend for yourself. Like if you can achieve like the American dream and financial independence and whatever, good for you. If not, like you're
I mean,
screwed.
people do it here too, right? I just think they are not going into the financial knowledge space so much before they actually start doing it.
Sure, sure.
But yeah,
But
like
here it's also much more socialist, I would say, than in the US, no? Like there is more social aspects to it in terms of like you have the pension systems, you have more social parties, you have like health insurance, all of that, right? That's also very
Yeah.
different to the US. Like there is like really okay, it's very capitalist, obviously, but it's like okay, you're on your own. There's some products and tools that will help you if you also have the capitalist mindset. There you go.
yeah, in yeah, like for example, my dad, he got insurance money in his mid 50s. So, and I have the feeling he was kind of banking on that too as a backup plan. So he got that money. And then I have another friend who from Switzerland actually, who just worked his ass off in Greenpeace, paid some money, and then went to the bank, got a huge loan, bought a property in Zurich, is renting it out. And in Zurich, in Switzerland, as far as I know, you don't really pay back the property. It's a bit different. Like you just pay the bank. That's it. Which is a bit of like, you're not paying off the property. You're not gonna really own it. I mean, you own it, but like you will
Are
keep
you
the
just to renew the mortgage?
yeah,
Yeah.
How,
you just renew the yeah, yeah. So, but that gives you then a nice payoff. So he is traveling the world for, I think, over a decade now. Um,
interesting.
In Switzerland, they tax wealth also, so you
yeah,
don't really want to have assets like real estate
Okay, interesting.
without the cash flow. So people just yeah, they buy good properties,
yeah.
but the bank keeps them so that they're on the liability side.
But from his
Um,
perspective, right? Like he makes more from rental income than he is paying the bank, and that's paying him passive income for over a decade now, and
yeah.
Yeah.
he's just enjoying life. And he did that when he was 40. So, and I don't think he has planned on it with a fire movement or something. I think he just, you know, made some money working in high level positions for Greenpeace, and then at some point just saw the opportunity of buying a property, was a good deal, and then figured, all right, now I have enough money to live per month, it's paying the bills. I might as well just do whatever the fuck I want. So
And that's a perfect example to me of income source design. I mean, don't get me wrong, or for the people listening, like, yeah, investments and like real estate, whatever it's also one income source, and work is also one income source. You can also say, for example, my number one income source should be work, and I'm gonna climb the career ladder and gonna just increase my income source every year.
Yeah.
That will help me to, retire, whatever. Or you do it like Alex's friend and say, look, I do it for a certain period of time, but then I want my main income source to be something else from a very different age than most people would call retirement. And I
Yeah.
guess that's also where then like financial planning really comes in and can help you to, evaluate what sort of income sources would be good for you, what can you do? Where does like what sort of income source fit into your, life plans? I guess like real estate for him in Zurich is a very stable income source, so he can actually be, you know, out and about and do things. And it's not
Let's see.
very volatile at all too. Yeah.
His refinancing is coming up.
Okay.
I think 15 years are almost over, so he has to refinance property. Let's see what the bank says now that he doesn't have an income anymore, like a stable job income. So some planning might be still needed, but I think that for our flow, right, how we see it, or what we also would recommend is that you really start looking at your current situation, that you know where you are financially right now, set goals, set tangible goals, right? You want to have this amount of money at this point in time, and you can calculate, right? If you like retirement, use, for example, your costs or your income, calculate the future value of it, and then look at all the pensions. And that's where it becomes a bit tricky, right? That's where also I think our expertise comes in, and like roughly having a good estimate of how much is gonna come from the German pension, your company pension, your pensions abroad, property, right? Talking about, are you gonna live in your property and not pay rent? Are you gonna sell that property and then invest the amount? Are you gonna rent it out, right? So the different ways of how you can use, for example, an existing property or one that you're like still buying, and you kind of need to put it all together. And then taxes also play a role. So that part I think that's probably why most people don't do it, because it is difficult to put all those different pieces together, right? Some pay out a lump sum.
Yeah.
And with that, once you have that, you can set also additional goals, and then you can figure out what is the right investment opportunity, right? Because if you want to buy a property in 2 years from now and you need a down payment, and you probably invest your money very differently, or should invest your money for that very differently than if you plan to have that money 30 years from now in retirement, right? So it's really good to have your goals first before you think about what is the right investment.
I think just step back for like a second, like in terms of like cash flow design, like because you mentioned like a bunch of different like things. I see it as there's like there's the pensions, right? Like different variations of that, which will really only get paid on like the official sort of like retirement age, maybe like slightly around that in your 60s somewhere. And then there's sort of like the more independent like sources that you can create for yourself. So like within the pensions, like there's also different things. There's like the state pension, like Alex mentioned. There's company pensions depending like on your company. Like there's also companies do some matching like to how much you pay in. Some are better than others. Some invest better than others. There's lots of different products. The whole world. There's like private pensions which you can buy independently, but it's still a pension. So like it only pays out like when you actually retire. And then foreign ones, right? Like so can also be like different sources from different places. Those have its own set of rules, own set of planning, own taxes, own complications, especially the foreign ones. Like if you're living in Germany, how they interact with the German system and all of that. Like there's a lot of complexity there. And we do spend a lot of time actually like discussing this. And then so that's like the whole bucket of like pensions. And then there's like stuff you can do by yourself, real estate, like investments, like all different sorts of investments. And that's sort of a bit more flexible, like in terms of how you go about it. But yeah, planning really helps to figure out what actually works for you, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I would also say, yeah, Alex, you go first. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, for example, the investment topic, right? You also don't know what you don't know, right? So on the pension side, what I see a lot is that people confuse, for example, the company pension with the state pension, especially US and UK citizen, because it's part of the system that, companies take care of the pension. In Germany, the company pension system is very flawed, I would say, and it's not the same as the state, right? And I see people accumulating I had one client with, I think, 4 company pensions. Every time you switch companies, they cancel the old contract, sign a new one, there's a commission. It's a very different market, and understanding what you actually have and if it's a good deal is very important. Otherwise, you lose a lot of money with this. On the real estate side, also, you don't know what you don't know, right? A lot of people come with the idea of owning property and, you build wealth, and they know that from abroad. But abroad, a lot of countries actually help you subsidize homeownership. Germany does not. Owning a home in Germany is only better than renting in very particular conditions. I think, Kareem, for example, you got lucky having low interest rates. The rent in Berlin was already pretty high. Like if we do your calculation for renting versus buying, I think you did a really, you got very lucky, and I mean you crunched your numbers
Yeah, I
before.
got lucky and like I tried to intentionally buy at the right time. I mean, I studied it a bit, but sure.
But
Luck is no excuse.
that's something
Yes, yes.
I think it makes sense to calculate. There are a lot of things that people don't necessarily factor in, like maintenance costs. Actually, that
No,
buying
of course, of course.
is that part. And then what a lot of people don't know is in Germany, what subsidized is renting, buying property and renting it out, becoming a landlord. And you don't have to. When I tell that to people, they usually say, oh, "Okay, but I don't want to be a landlord." It's, you can get a housing, somebody to manage the property for you. It's in the calculation, then how much that costs. And there's a lot of tax benefits. But also there, once you're at that point, there are huge difference, and it's really important that you know what the tax deductions actually are, how they work for different properties. And that's, I think, where we come in to, educate and to provide you with like a good understanding of which property gives which tax discounts, what are the things that actually are a good match for you, right? That like we enable you to then be able to manage your own finances. That's in the end, I think, what we're striving for.
I think that also comes down to the fact that we just live in that reality that, you mentioned the two systems, state pensions that sort of like come by design because it's automatically deducted from your salary versus
Mm.
you do independent work. And it's very clear that today that if you're our age, like mid-30s or early 30s, that you need to do independent stuff. Like it's impossible to just rely on the state stuff. And doing that independent stuff as an international can be very challenging
Especially as a US citizen.
for all the reasons Alex also just mentioned. Like, and that's really where you have to, in our view and in our belief, that's why we founded Finance Mate, is like why you actually have to plan. Like you can't just just hope for the best. I mean, you can do that, but it's I would say
Yeah.
riskier than investing. If you think investing is risky, hoping for the best is probably riskier. So planning is very important. Yeah.
I think
And
the truth is that just you won't be able to maintain like anywhere near your level of lifestyle that you're living now when you're young and like supposed to be sort of like, bombing it, right? Like, so I
Yeah.
think that's sort of like the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like really think of it like ahead, you will need to go down like in your lifestyle later in life. And that's hard. Like, that's really hard.
Yeah. And it's not like fear mongering or whatever, right? It's like just reality. And it can be also very exciting if you actually tackle it, because then you can plan your future much better and you can be even more
Totally.
excited about it instead of like in the back of your head even maybe be worried. And I think that's also the beauty of of planning. Yeah.
I think good point is also to mention when it's time to start thinking about retirement planning, right? Because we get very different requests in that sense when people start thinking about it. On the one hand, like for some people, it's so, because everybody tells them like they have to start saving money for retirement, that the moment they have some surplus, they start trying to put that in away in pension insurance or in like ETF investments or something. It's, by the way, also what I did, like doing university, instead of putting my money on savings account, I just immediately invested the money, because I was like, I don't want to lose it to inflation. I needed the deposit for my first apartment. I needed to furnish the place and so on. And my rainy day fund or my savings was like very low, right? I wasn't really planning for that. So I got lucky because I could sell some of my ETFs and for a good rate. But that also could have been very painful, right? Because I did need a place. I did need to pay a down payment. So like if the market would have been pretty bad, I would have had actually or lost a lot of money. So what I'm want to say is like a good time to actually start thinking about retirement is when you looked at your debt. Does it make sense to pay it off, or does it make rather sense to invest the money? Like you have a surplus per month, can you actually invest? And then do you have a decent amount of savings and emergency funds that you feel like if anything happens, you can draw from funds that are liquid, that are there, that are for those cases where you don't have to start unraveling pension insurance. Because the reality is for Germans that I think every third pension insurance is actually plundered. So people, they get sold the pension insurance because they were told like, yeah, there's not enough money when you retire, which is true. But if you don't have the funds on your bank account and in an emergency you have to then plunder your pension insurance, no, take care of the liquidity of your cash, your emergency funds first.
But I think also like what I've noticed in Germany, like compared to other places, there's a lot of this like stacking going on. And I think that's actually where the cash flow design thing like really makes sense, right? Like because you're just stacking different pensions from different places and different like income sources to actually make a proper income, that's maybe equivalent to or close to like what you maybe make in your now current full-time job, inflation adjusted. And because there's so many moving parts to it, it's very easy to like overlook it. Like if you get like your state pension statement or even the company pension, and then it's like, when you're 67, you're gonna get paid 300 euros a month. And you're like, 300 euros? Like, I mean, like I spent that like last weekend, right? So you sort of like ignore it and you don't think about it, but it's really about the stacking, like about like seeing all the different sources, stacking them up and seeing what they actually come out as. And then if there's still a gap, like after that stack, okay, let's think about what actions we can take in the next 30 years, not like, oh, next year I need like whatever, a huge gap to fill, right?
Yeah, I have well, something to add, or maybe a different view on when you should start thinking about retirement. When I come back to my statement of I think of retirement as like your income sources and like how they project into the future and like how you can move from one income source to another. But to me, it's like you at least you can start thinking about retirement in that sense when you have your first income source,
Yeah.
or your first stable income source
Yeah.
with like skills that you acquired through university, a brand, whatever it is. Like, but when you have income sources, that's when you can start. That's when you can start thinking about it, and then then you can think about, okay, do I want to increase this income source by making career moves, or do I want to like start build up other income sources? Do I want to do both? Do I want to do three things, four things, five things? I mean, there's a limit at some point, but yeah, as soon as you have an income source, you can start thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about it for sure, and planning also, and that's also what I tell my clients when even when they come and they're like, oh, maybe it's not time for me to actually put money away, or they want to focus on another goal, like buying an apartment or something like that. They're like, oh, I will focus on that for now and talk about retirement later. I'm worried about retirement later. I think the main part is the planning and thinking about it, right? That you understand the situation, that you understand where you currently are, what the goal is, and what the gap is, for example, in between, and the options that you do have that you could be taking, right, or looking into. And then from my perspective, there can be other priorities, right? You can start your own business, for example. You need some money for this, and maybe the business is then going to help you with retirement, right? Because you have a job that you maybe love, a business that's worth something, or buying property, similar direction, right? That can be a focus right now, but also it can be part of your retirement strategy. But then you should already start thinking about, hey, I have an apartment now. Am I going to live in it and then not pay rent? Am I going to sell the apartment eventually, or a house because it's too big, right? And then you have a plan. Of course, the plan changes. Ideally, I think we talked about this last episode. You should come back to it when things change, update your financial plan. But the planning should start really early, right? As you said, when you have your first income, you can start planning for it and have an idea what your goals are and how you can achieve them. And then you can have other priorities, right? Buying property, build up your savings, whatever. There can be different.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I think it's time to wrap up the episode.
Let's retire the retirement episode.
Let's retire the retirement episode. It's been fun. I think it's a huge topic, obviously. Like we mentioned so many things we could go in depth in, and we will at some point. I'm looking forward to that already. But yeah, I think maybe to wrap it up, it's retirement, kaffee, kuchen, and cash flow, right? It's really about cash flow in the end. Different income sources. The way financial planning can come into this is to actively think about these income sources, project them, analyze them, optimize them, whatever you want to word you want to use, and or build new ones. And that's also where then execution needs to happen, where we see us with FinanceMate as partners, sparring partners, to actually also help you execute on that to really get those new income sources established and make sure that your liquidity needs are there. Like that's what Alex was talking about the last couple minutes is, you have different liquidity needs at different points in life. If you're international and you're changing, jobs, countries, whatever it is, you start family planning, like that's different liquidity needs. And your income sources and your assets and your general wealth also need to be able to meet these liquidity needs at certain points in time. And that's about it. I think it's really time to retire the episode now. And yeah, it was fun again. You guys, see you next week. Bye bye.